Okay, everybody, today we're going to be looking at some mean absolute deviation problems. There's a lot of steps to these problems here, but the steps you all know how to do. So we'll go back in and just break down a couple problems for you and let you try one on your own. So to start with this first problem here, we've got these 8 numbers up here, and we're going to try to find the mean absolute deviation. So the steps down here, and I've kind of written some things to the side because there's different ways you can do this here. I like to use step 2 and 3 over here to the side that you see I've written. First thing you're going to do is find the mean. So when you go back in here and look for these numbers, find the mean of these by adding these up and divide by 8. So you see they've done that for you and found the mean is 56. So when you, once again, the reason they got 56 is they added these numbers up and then divided by 8, because you add your numbers up and divide by the amount of numbers that you have. The second step, I've written over here with some steps I think a little bit easier for people to understand. So subtract each number from the mean. So all these numbers that we had up here, we're going to subtract them from the mean. And then it says take the absolute value of each of these numbers. In other words, you're going to make them positive. So I've rewritten, you see I've done a number line way to show their steps for step 2. I've rewritten it down here with the way I like to use. Either way is fine. What I do is I write down the mean. So since I had 8 numbers that I started with up here, so these 8 numbers up here, I'm going to write down the mean 8 times because I'm going to be subtracting 8 numbers from the mean. So I wrote down 56, which was the mean. I'm writing down 56 8 times. And subtracting each one of these numbers that I had in my original box. So minus 52, minus 48, minus 60, and so forth. Now, these 2 lines here are my absolute value lines. Remember back from the beginning of the school year, that's when you make numbers positive when they go inside the absolute value lines. So here when you do 56 minus 52, it's already a positive 4, so leave it as a positive 4. 56 minus 48 is positive 8, so just leave it as a positive 8. 56 minus 60 was negative 4, but that's going to become a positive 4 when we get to our next step. 56 minus 55 is 1. 56 minus 59 is negative 3. It'll become a positive 3. 56 minus 54 is 2. 56 minus 58 is negative 2. It'll become a positive 2. And then 56 minus 62 is negative 6. It'll become a positive 6. So that's step 2. Now when you go to step 3, it says find the mean of the numbers you got in step 2. So all you're going to do now is find the mean of these numbers to get your final answer. Remember what I told you, these negatives become positive. Now they've actually already done this step for you over here. They're taking all these numbers and adding them up. Remember the positive form of these, so no negatives, all positives. Add them up and divide by 8, so we had 8 numbers over here. And when you divide that by 8, you get 3 75/100ths, or 3.75. So that would be the mean absolute deviation for this first problem. So a lot of steps involved in terms of a lot of numbers and absolute value and finding the mean, but it's all stuff you know how to do. You know how to find the mean of things, you know how to take the absolute number, you know how to subtract, finding the mean again for your final step. Let's look at another problem. So on this back side here, you see you've got these 8 numbers that we're going to work with this time. So they've done step 1 for you. They found the mean. So they added up these numbers. You have 8 numbers again, so they're dividing by 8, and they got 64 for their mean. Their second step, remember, they're using a number line, trying to figure out how far each one of these numbers is from the mean. I'm going to go back in and use that step I showed you. So I'm going to write down the mean, which is 64, 8 times, because I've got 8 numbers. So we'll write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to put subtraction symbols next to each one of the means. And I'm just going to subtract each one of these numbers from the mean. So minus 58, minus 88, minus 40, minus 60. Next number is 72. Then we have 66. Then we have 80. And finally 48. Put my little equal signs. Okay. Now I'm going to come back in and put my absolute value bars. Because everything I subtract here is going to become a positive number. If it's already positive, it'll stay positive. But if it's negative, it's going to become positive there. So when I go ahead and start with my subtraction piece here, I'll do 64 minus 58. I get positive 6. That's okay. I'll keep it positive 6. Here, 64 minus 88 is actually negative 24. Remember, it's going to become positive 24 because it's in these absolute value bars. 64 minus 40 is going to give me positive 24. 64 minus 60 is positive 4. 64 minus 72 would actually be negative 8. But we're going to make it a positive 8 because it's inside these absolute value bars. 64 minus 66, negative 2, but make it positive 2 because it's inside the absolute value bars. 64 minus 80, negative 16. Make it a positive 16 because it's inside absolute value bars. And then 64 minus 48 is 16. So for my step 2, I go back in, I subtract each number from the mean, and then make them all positive. And so for step 3, you're going to go back in and find the average or the mean of these numbers right here. So you see I've already done that for you. They've added these up. And if you add these up, you actually get 100. Now, like I said, the same numbers we have right here, just adding up all these positive numbers. And then dividing by 8 again to get their final answer of 12 and 5/10 for this mean absolute deviation here. So that's your second problem that we worked out there. Let's look at a third problem. Just trying to get you familiar with this stuff. So you see we've got these numbers here. It's 12 numbers total for this problem here. Now notice what this set of notes says for step 1. It says put the data set in order from least to greatest. You don't have to do that. We've already worked out 2 problems that have shown you that you can go ahead and get the correct answer without having to work these from least to greatest for your first step. So that's not necessarily a step that you would need to do if you're trying to find mean absolute deviation. Now we've talked about some other stuff, maybe median, things like that it might be helpful with, but for mean absolute deviation this is not required. So for the next step, you're going down here and just solving for the mean. So that's the same thing we've been doing for our first step on the other 2 problems. So take all these numbers that we had, you add them up. This time we're dividing by 12, so you see you add it up, you get 324. This time we're dividing by 12 because we started out with 12 numbers in the beginning. So when we divide by 12, we get our answer. So I'm sorry, not our answer, our answer for the mean, I should say, for 27. So that's our first step, getting the mean there being 27. The second step, so notice this time, we've already seen it the way I do it with the absolute value bars down here to showing you a chart. We've also seen it with the number line on that other paper. So all they're doing here is the same thing I've done with the absolute value bar, subtracting the numbers that you had up here from the mean. So the mean was 27, subtracting each one of these numbers from it. So here they're basically saying 27 minus 3 is 24. 27 minus 19 is 8. 27 minus 20 is 7. 27 minus 25 is 2. 27 minus 26 is 1. Remember, these would be negative, but since we're making them absolute value, in other words, making them all positive, they're going to be positive answers. So 27 minus 28 would be 1. It would be basically negative when we're making it positive. 27 minus 29 would be negative 2, make it positive, and so forth. So now for step 3, which is basically our final piece here, you're finding the mean of these numbers down here. So you're adding up these numbers, then dividing by 12 because we have 12 total numbers. See, they've added them up down here. They've gotten 84. Then they divide it. Scoot the paper up a little bit. So they got 84 and they divided it by 12 and got 7 for their mean absolute deviation. So that's a third example we wanted to work out for you there to make sure you can understand this process. We'll look at one more problem. So this is one that's kind of starting from scratch, no steps down. I want you to pause your video and see if you can go back in and solve this one on your own. So pause the video, try this on your own, and we'll come back and solve this together after you've had a chance to try it. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try this now. We'll see how you did on it. So first things first, for step 1, we're going to go back in and add all these numbers together to find the mean. So you're going to take the 6 plus the 9 plus the 2 plus the 10. Then you got 4 and then 5. So now on this line we have a 5, a 1, and a 3. I know it's hard for you to kind of see me because I'm left-handed, so I'll try to write it and back away a little bit here. So all I've done is I've taken these numbers and put plus signs between them here. So 6 plus 9 plus 2 plus 10 plus 4 plus 5 written down 3 times, and then plus 1 plus 3. And remember, we're going to divide this by how many numbers we had. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 numbers. So we're finding the mean here. So when you add these up, we would get 50. Bring over the divide by 10. And you divide that, you see you get a mean of 5. So that's your first step, find the mean. Second step, you're going to take this number and write it down this many times because you have 10 total numbers. So you're going to write it down 10 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Put your subtraction signs next to each number. And now put these numbers next to the subtraction sign. So the 6, the 9, Got a 2, a 10. Next we got a 4, and then a 5, 1, 3. Put my equal signs here. Absolute value bars. So remember, everything that goes in here is going to become positive. So we start this process. 5 minus 6 is negative 1, but we'll make that positive because it's in the absolute value bars. 5 minus 9, negative 4. Make it positive because it's in the absolute value bars. 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 minus 10 is negative 5. Make it positive inside these bars. 5 minus 4 is 1. Easy peasy right here. 0, 0, 0. 5 minus 1 is 4. 5 minus 3 is 2. So step 2 is taking the mean that we got, subtracting each one of these numbers that we started with from the mean. So now when I go back in, all these numbers are positive. So to go and find your final step, find the mean of these or the average, so add them up. So add all these numbers up here. When you add these numbers up, you'll get 20. And remember, you're finding the mean or the average of these numbers, so you add them up and then divide by how many you have. We have 10 numbers here, so we'll divide by 10. So to get your mean absolute deviation for this problem, your final answer will be 2. So it should have been what you got when you tried it on your own.